and start Jarrett the last couple games of the season here. Um, none of us is happy with where we're at, but we think it's an opportunity to, evaluate a younger player who hasn't had much time to play. Talking to Derek, who was great. He understands the scenario that we're in and the situation, and very supportive of the two young guys. Those three guys obviously have worked together hand in hand all year, and he'll do anything he can to help them. So, that's what we're going to do. And obviously, we're
And welcome everybody to the glorious episode of the Put On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting on the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. Had to get outside a little bit today. So not in the regular studio, but breaking news for the Raiders, and breaking news for this organization for a long period of time is the fact that Derek Carr is not going to start a football game for the Raiders. And this is a decision that is made by Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler, and also probably Mark Davis as well. He's not injured. He just isn't playing because of performance-based or just what they feel like this is just not the way they want to roll with the team in the future right now, or at least the last two games right now. Obviously, he's not going to talk about the money, Ryan, but the money is part of it because if he does get hurt in these last two games, that injury thing kind of jumps right in, right?
Yeah, he's not even going to be active. He's going to be inactive. So he's worn a Raider jersey for the last time it appears in Pittsburgh. This just comes down to the way the contract was structured, and if he gets injured in the last two games, the money becomes guaranteed. It's over $40 million that the Raiders will be on the hook for. He can't get injured if he's not playing. And Josh McDaniels can stand up there at the podium and say, we want to get a look at younger guys. We want to get a look at Jared Stidham. We know this is not about getting a look at Jared Stidham. This is about making sure that Derek Carr doesn't get hurt so they can open up their options. This is probably closes the door on Derek Carr. I don't see how you can go back to him in February if you can't work out a trade and they shake hands and he's the quarterback moving forward. So this is Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler deciding that he's not going to be the quarterback moving forward this year and in the future. And Derek understood that, and Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels understood that with the way they structured this contract. So both sides had to know this was coming.
And it's just, I mean, it makes all sense in the world. I think that to say Derek has not gotten a fair shake, there's been some pretty bad Raider teams, right? And in his era, there's been some very bad Raider teams, but I think the whole argument that he hasn't had a fair shake. I mean, he has had played with some really talented players. He's played with some guys who are, maybe probably might be future Hall of Famers. He's played behind, some really great offensive lines, even, 2015, 16. But I mean, it just makes, we've seen enough. And I think his game, this is really not about something personal in my mind. It's something about this, like, on the field performance is just not there. And we gotta be, as far as, just be fair about it. Like, take out the emotion of it if you're a Derek Carr fan.
Yeah, if you look at it, and there was a tweet this morning, or maybe it was last night, that Derek Carr has had 6 seasons of 9 losses or more. Now, that's not all Derek Carr's fault. That's an organizational issue more than anything. But no one's ever had more than that. I think it was Vinny Testaverde and Jim Everett were the only other two. So to say that he hasn't gotten a fair shake, I would argue that the leash that he's had through circumstances that were outside of his control, that were organizational issues, has probably been longer than most quarterbacks in NFL history. If Derek Carr, if you just took him off the Raiders and put him on another team and he had the same type of performance, 1-loss record, I know is not a quarterback stat, but just same type of performance, probably never makes it to year 9 with any other organization. He had a lot of things happen around him with the coaching changes, with obviously with what happened last year with the team with Henry Ruggs and Damon Arnett and some of the stuff off the field. But we'll remember Derek Carr as Raider fans as probably the best quarterback they've had since Rich Gannon. We'll remember the good times with Derek Carr. We'll remember the comeback against Kansas City and Oakland, where he throws a touchdown to Crabtree with no time left. We'll remember the game in New Orleans where Jack Del Rio went for 2. We'll remember them going to the playoffs in 2016 and the season Derek Carr had then. We'll remember the pass to Seth Roberts against Tampa in overtime. So there was a lot of good times with Derek Carr. Unfortunately, there was a lot more bad times over 9 years. And it's bound to happen. It happens in every sport where a team loses the face of their franchise at some point, and it came to a point now where the new regime, and this was always an option when the Raiders changed head coach and general manager, they did not draft Derek Carr. And that's usually what happens is when a new regime comes in, changes happen. And Derek Carr survived a couple of them. He did not survive the Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler change.
Yeah, I mean, and they gave him, I mean, even with the injuries to Waller and Renfro, you still had Devontae Adams, who's all world. You still had Josh Jacobs having one of the best years by in the history. And the Raiders have had great running backs in the history of the Raiders, period, from a total yards from scrimmage point of view. And it still didn't, you know, it still didn't get them wins. And I think the biggest thing for me for this year was just the putrid like performances in the offenses had in these third quarters. I mean, like when they had leads, when they had opportunities to put these games away, they had opportunities to do it and they just couldn't do it. And I think that is where like they just said, "Hey, we got to move on." And I can't fault them for moving on.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, that we're going to remember, you got to remember, the higher the expectations are, the more that is expected from us fans and from the front office and from the coaching staff. The expectations this year were playoffs. Those were the expectations when they went out and got Chandler Jones and Devontae Adams. So anything short of that, it was an issue, and that's what happened. And we're going to remember 2022 as the season where the Raiders couldn't finish. They had leads, but the offense fell completely in the second half of 5 games. The defense gave up points late in the fourth quarter in those games as well. So there was no complimentary football. The defense couldn't finish in a lot of these games, and the offense didn't help them out either. And that's what we're going to remember. But in the long term, the Raiders are going to have, it might take a few years. It might take several years to find a quarterback that can come in and build the leadership and, you know, the following that Derek Carr had. But at the end of the day, as a Raider fan, they need to do what's best to put wins in the win column. And that's what I care about. I want the Raiders to win football games. I don't care how they do it. I just want them to win.
I'm back. I heard about the following, everything like that, and I understand it because like there's been people who tweeted out the long list of individuals who have played quarterback for the Raiders for years, and yes, we all know about the Charlie Fries and everybody like Rick Myers and everybody like that. We know about those names, but it's still you got to get back. Somebody has to step in and get back to the standard. Like you know, what did Mike Tomlin?
The standard is the standard.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin always says the standard is a standard, right? So you have to be able to turn the heat up out here in San Diego. It's getting hot out here. But they do need to be able to do that and have that standard. If you can't have that standard, then what are we doing then? What are we doing out here if you're not out here trying to win a championship? The goal is not to win, to play close in Kansas City during the regular season and lose 30-29. It's not about that. It's not about going 2-7 and trying to get out of that. It's we're trying to go 7-2. Like that's what they really have to do. And I really feel like I can see a path to winning and building at the same time. We'll see if they'll be able to do that. But you know, I don't think Stidham. I don't think the starting quarterback for this team is on the roster right now. I think that's fair. But we'll see what happens as far as that goes.
Yeah.
But Derek Carr is no longer the quarterback of the Raiders right now.
I would add this move wasn't made in a vacuum. That Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler didn't wake up today and say, you know what, today's the day. We're going to move on from Derek Carr. So this wasn't planned before they took the position with how they structured that contract extension. They've been thinking about this for a year. So they're not doing this blindly. They know what the options are in free agency. They've evaluated the draft prospects in this draft. They know what might be out on the trade market. So let this play out. If the draft is over April 28th or 29th and the roster is Jared Stidham and Jacoby Brissett, then we can have another conversation because obviously they didn't play this right. But let's see what the next dominoes are before we judge the new regime and how this goes. So
Question.
like I said, there's a plan here. This didn't just happen overnight. So let's see who they bring in. Now, is it some fans aren't going to like it, but what if it's Tom Brady and he brings Gronkowski and then, you know, they trade Waller for a second, they trade Carr for a first or a second. Now you're sitting in the draft and you have, you know, 2 first rounders, 2 or 3 second rounders based on the capital they get. And then they really rebuild this team. They get a quarterback, they get a corner, they get a defensive tackle, they get an offensive lineman. This roster is going to look completely different. So we get to training camp next year and we have the same questions. then we can talk about this front office. But I really think, and I know I've told you this the last couple of days, that Mark Davis has given the blessing to this new staff that I think it's going to be 2 more years, not 1. I don't see Josh McDaniels just completely getting fired next year unless they blow 5 leads like they did this year. But there's a plan in place here, and Mark Davis has signed off on it.
Yeah, no question about it. I just kind of feel like this is going to be. I think my question to you is, couldn't they have done this at the beginning of the season and guys just got ahead of the game? Did they really need to? Did they really need to give Carr 1 more year? And that's the biggest question I have for you. Is that part of it? Pause that.
I think they wanted to try. I think Josh McDaniels wanted to see what he had with Derek Carr, and I think he didn't like the answer. And they had Devontae Adams. They just made that move. They had Waller. They had Renfro. Yeah. So I think they wanted to try it, but they obviously built in an out clause in this contract extension. And the contract extension, let's be honest, they gave him, I think it was like $7 million signing bonus. It wasn't a lot of money up front. They didn't tie themselves to year 2. So I think it was, hey, let's go in there. This guy's had some success. Let's see what it looks like. And at the end of the day, Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler decided this is not the quarterback we want to run this system. So, and then they made the decision.
I do think that though, if this thing totally implodes, I mean, I think that he could go in year 2. But
if they win 3, if they go out and get a veteran and they win 3 games, and Devontae Adams gets hurt and they blow a bunch of leads, or they're just non-competitive, they're losing games by double digits, 20 points several times, then I could see that. But I'm going to see what the roster looks like as they head to training camp, because I have a feeling the roster is going to look much different. And Mark Davis has an ego too. He's an owner in Vegas. So I think they've kind of laid out, this is how we want to fix this roster. We're going to move on to quarterback. Our plan is, here's plan A, plan B, plan C. Here's how we're going to fix the defense. It's going to take a lot of money in signing bonuses to bring in a lot of free agents. And I think that's what they're going to have to do. But Mark Davis clearly has signed off on them moving in this direction. And Mark Davis is going to have to open up his checkbook and do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to. I mean, you look at the events at Allegiant. He's getting a cut of all those events. So the money's going to be there for him to do so.
I do want to dispel one quick myth. The whole, well, what are we going to do with Devontae? I've looked at the numbers. It's a $31 million cap hit to move on from Devontae Adams and trade him. Devontae Adams is going nowhere. He's going to be wearing number 17 in the silver and black next season.
Yeah, no question about that. About number 28 might be a different story. But I think 17 definitely is going to be they're going to be moving on. And it's.
How about this one? Yeah. Conspiracy theory I just saw that the reason that McDaniels went away from the run in the second half was because he's now decided he wants to keep Josh Jacobs. So they wanted to keep the carries at 15 or under, and they wanted to test Derek Carr in the second half to see if he could do it in the cold, and he couldn't. And that's the whole reason for the play calling in the second half last week, which to me blows my mind. That's not what happened, but there's fans now talking about that.
That's an incredible conspiracy theory, because if you actually, I mean, it shouldn't have taken until week 16 or whatever to see what you need to see from Derek Carr as far as that goes. So I'm gonna throw that that magic bullet theory out the door as far as that goes. I'm not gonna buy that one. But he's not either. Yeah, I'm not buying that one at all. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I'm not sure what people, but fans we try to take the emotion out of it, and we go by just factual information. We try to go by all 22. We go by game film. We look at all the aspects of it, and I can't find a reason to bring him back. I can't. I mean, you cannot. And I asked that question like, what? Like, there's no statistical thing. There's no. I mean, like the sacks, all this stuff like that. People are trying to make it seem like it's a sack number or all these other things like that. It's just he's not. You can't bring him back, and you can't be afraid of it too. There are options out there. There's Gardner Minshew. There's Jimmy Garoppolo, who's going to be a free agent. There's going to be Tom Brady, who's going to be a free agent. I think Tom would probably be how much does Tom want? I mean, does Gronk come back with Waller? How much will it cost? How much will it cost to be? How much will it cost to be? To bring back, to have Waller. I mean, to have Tom Brady and Gronk come back. Like, I'm not sure how much money that would take. I'm sure if they needed some little extra cash, I'm sure the guy from UFC would probably throw some cash that way, because he wants those 2 guys there desperately. But at the end of the day, like, when I look at Tom Brady at Tampa Bay, it looked like a guy who just had he is that first year especially he had a myriad of weapons. If he came to the Raiders, he would have a myriad of weapons, and also Ryan a situation where he has a system that he knows already. He's not trying to go from what Arians wanted to do to what he's wanted to do. He is 46 years old. I understand.
Better fix the interior of that offensive line though, because interior pressure kills Tom Brady.
Kills Tom Brady, no question about it.
And Derek Carr too.
And Chris and Chris and Chris Jones from Kansas City's. You got people in this division who can get to the quarterback from the D tackle position, so you got to watch that as well. But and you got to be much tighter because he's way less athletic than Derek Carr is. But at the end of the day, I mean the move is the move, and they're trying to obviously get as high a draft pick as humanly possible. In hindsight, they probably wish they maybe did this move earlier, but you kind of with the playoffs there, you can't make that move when you're in the playoff mix. Now that the playoff mix it takes an absolute miracle for them to make the playoffs. The move makes sense.
I think too, you have to look at it, and this isn't just about Derek Carr's performance or non-performance. It's about what you're paying to get the performance he's giving you. So if $15 million to get the performance Derek Carr got you, that's great. That's definitely acceptable. At $40 million, you're hoping for a lot more. So as you pay these athletes more money, and it doesn't matter what sport we're talking about, they need to produce at that level to keep getting paid that amount of money. And Derek Carr hasn't done that. But I want to see, this is actually about roster building moving forward. Let's see how Dave Ziegler wants to build this roster. Clearly, they didn't want to sink $40 million into Derek Carr. They've shown us that they don't like some of the draft picks from the prior regime. They've shown us a history in New England of not paying running back. So there are some players on this roster that Raider fans are attached to because they're good players on their favorite team, me and you included. But I want to see how they build this roster, because if you look around the successful teams in the NFL and how they've structured rosters, it's been all built around rookie quarterback deals, the really good rosters in the league. Even the one you can even talk about Buffalo. They weren't very good 5 years ago. They built this thing around Josh Allen.
Yep.
Kansas City was good. They lucked into Patrick Mahomes being as good as he is and being the best quarterback in the league, about a pretty good roster at the time. But now they've had to sustain that roster since paying Patrick Mahomes and losing Tyreek Hill, losing Tyrann Mathieu, and they've still played at a high level. So that's why I think that this regime is going to get probably 2 more years to really build this roster. And this year you can kind of throw out because they've gotten rid of a lot of players, and they've stripped it down, to be honest, outside of Colton Miller, Derek Carr, who now it looks like won't be back. We don't know about Darren Waller, but I would say moving forward, there's probably only 5 or 6 guys that can feel safe. You might see players get traded in the offseason for draft picks that we're going to be shocked at that point. But let's see how they build this roster. They build it inside out. Do they build the line first, the offensive defense? Do they build from the secondary back into the line? They want to cover guys. So let's see what their vision is before we want to grade them.
Yeah. So somebody just tweeted out that Waller played 21 snaps versus 21 snaps Saturday to Moreau's 36. He low-key benched 2, lots of moves in the offseason. I mean, like I said, possible.
If they want draft picks, they can get one for Darren Waller. To me, I still think that him and Adams on this team give the offense the best chance.
Yes. Because
you have to have that guy that can win opposite him and be a vertical threat and be a matchup nightmare against linebackers and safeties. We've seen what the offense looks like when you don't have that, when it's Foster Moreau, Matt Collins, and Devontae Adams, and it's not good enough.
It's not good enough.
I don't. They may move him if Green Bay says here's a number 2. They may do it. I wouldn't do it. We'll see what happens.
I think the play. You can't. I feel like, to me, like, even if you brought in if you brought in Gronk at this stage, is only going to he's not going to be a guy who plays.
He's going to be the inline blocker, and he'll play in 2 tight end sets and play 30 snaps a game. You're still going to want Darren Waller to be the lead guy.
Exactly. So that would be like weird. That'd be weirdo stuff. I think people are just trying to throw stuff against the wall because maybe Carr is not going to be around anymore. So they think they're going to destroy it. I mean, I would definitely I like Renfro a lot. I think Renfro definitely has some juice. I thought he had some plays in this game against Pittsburgh. He can say he's a role in this offense, but I mean, there's certain packages that he can't play in. Like if you go once you go heavy, you can't have him on the field because he's not going to be able to block people as
And
well. So
now we're back to the issue I've been talking about all year. So
yeah,
the Raiders need a speed threat. They need a vertical guy so Devontae Adams isn't running cardio, which he did a lot of against Pittsburgh. I just watched the all-22. He ran a lot of vertical routes. But all three of those guys you want Devontae Adams to eat in the intermediate, quick separation, the ability to get open in a snap. That's where Hunter Renfrow needs to live in the middle of the field. That's where Darren Waller needs to live in the middle of the field. Unless they just want to turn Waller into a seam route, corner route, flag route guy and just work him vertically, you can't have all three of those guys working in the same part of the field.
Yeah.
So unless they plan to split Waller out and have him work more detached from the line of scrimmage, work the backside of 3x1s where you can get him manned up, but that's what you want. That's where you want Devontae Adams. So I think, and while as much as his salaries were completely gone, you would probably move Renfrow, but his cap hit actually, you don't save a ton of money if you move him. It's basically a wash or a $1 million difference.
What's Waller's?
Waller's actually the cap hit is only like 600,000. They say like $11.5 million. But where are you going to go replace that?
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
That kind of guy in this offense. So we'll see. I still don't know if it's Tom Brady. I still think it's probably more there's clearly a quarterback they like in the top 10 for them to be able to make this move now. And I don't know which one that is. Maybe it's CJ Stroud. I'm not sure it's Will Levis. Maybe it's someone we're not even talking about. But I still think you're right. It's going to be a bridge quarterback. It's going to be a guy in maybe a 2-year deal where they can get out of it after a year if the rookie develops. But there will be a young quarterback on this roster next year, and there will be a veteran quarterback. And I have a hard time believing it's Jared Stidham. It's QB1 as we approach training camp next year.
Yeah, I mean, okay, what free agent wide
And
receiver?
he's a free agent too. Like he may get an opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah, free agent wide receivers are Nelson Aguilar, Sterling Shepard, DJ Chalk, Marvin Jones. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anybody who has.
It's actually to me like looking at the free agent crop. I think it's going to be there's going to be a lot of teams with money to spend and not a lot of good players in free agency. So guys are going to get. It's going to be like baseball this year. They're going to be throwing large amounts of money at the top 8 to 10 free agents, and then you're going to have a drop off. I could see this regime waiting for guys to get released, maybe bargain basement at the bottom, maybe go after 1 or 2 big ticket items, and then really move around in the draft. Like if they can get draft picks for Derek Carr, their own picks, if they can move, someone else off this defense, if they can move an offensive player for draft picks, maybe they franchise Josh Jacobs and move him for draft picks, however they want to acquire them, and then be really aggressive moving around to get guys to fill holes. But even if they do that, I still think this team is probably 2 drafts away. I don't know. They can't fill all their holes in one off season.
Yeah, no, but I don't think
no teams can.
No team can, and no team can, and I think so. You think the whole band's coming back together though? Like the whole. I mean, I don't think you think the coordinators. You think everybody's coming back, or you think they're still going to kind of reevaluate and make some moves in the offseason?
Well, you just saw Josh McDaniels basically say this is Derek Carr's problem and moving on from him. So I think the whole offensive staff, in my opinion, would come back. And unless on the defensive side, I'm still not sold 100% Patrick Graham's coming back. Maybe if Jared Mayo wants to come over and he has a relationship with Josh McDaniels, that they do that, or maybe there's some connection we don't know about. But I'd say it's probably 70-30 that Graham comes back at this point, just based on the improvements the defense has made. Now, still, they don't create turnovers. They don't sack the quarterback. They don't affect field position a ton, but they've kept teams off the scoreboard. Now, again, they played some lesser quarterbacks over the last couple of weeks. It's not like they're playing Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
I fully expect the next 2 weeks they're going to give up, 27, 30 plus points. They're playing 2 high-powered, dynamic offenses. So to think that they're going to go out there and hold those teams to 13, 15 points, it's not going to happen. But we'll see. I could see a potential change of defensive coordinator if McDaniels has a guy out there he couldn't get last year that was under contract that he can now.
And I think the one guy who I would kind of like to see if they did make that move would be Brian Flores, because I do like pressure. I like a little bit more pressure than we've seen in the past. But
he's going to have options. Vance Joseph's is going to be out there.
Yeah.
The Broncos guy, Ajero, if he doesn't get the head job there, he could be available.
Yeah.
You could have Jared Mayo available. So there's going to be some defensive coordinators on the market.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, for Derek, what's the next thing is what's next. I mean, he's not even active for this, so he just has to be the good cheerleader for a couple of weeks and get ready to move on with his career. And then we'll see where that move takes him, whether he wants to walk away from the NFL or if he wants to go try his take his talent somewhere else. Because I mean, I'm sure there's going to be teams that who would probably want to kick the tires on Derek Carr to see if they would be able to see what they can
I
get
think
out
we
of
need
him.
to start connecting the dots. Once we get into mid-January and the new coaching staffs are in place, coordinators he's played with in the past. Rich Bisaccia is over there in Green Bay. If they want to move on from Aaron Rodgers, would they flip Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr? Obviously, there's other players or draft picks would be involved, but could you see a potential there? Did he have a falling out with Dennis Allen? Did he have a falling out with Jack Del Rio? Like, start reading the tea leaves of where coaches are that have been around him, because those are the ones that are going to believe the most in him. Is there a front office? Where's Reggie McKenzie? Is he still in Miami? Like, are they sold on Tua with all the concussions? So he's going to end up in a place where there's someone that used to be with the Raiders that's familiar with him, most likely.
Yeah, that should be. Yeah, that would make sense because it's all about relationships in the National Football League. It's not about. I mean, that's what the league is. It's all about relationships. So you get in while you're young, and then you try to make as many relationships as humanly possible. As far as that goes. Yeah, man, that's crazy. That's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, this is not.
Yeah.
I think a fan tweeted out. This hasn't even been 365 days from the playoff game they played in against the Chargers last year. But with the Chargers making the playoffs, with the Chiefs being the Chiefs, in order to catch up, man, you got to do something big. And I mean, I think if you're gonna do like the sabbatical year, then you can do the sabbatical year and just be just build up the youth team, and maybe if Caleb Williams repeats what he does, maybe be in line to draft somebody like that, or they like somebody in this draft, and you get a solid veteran who can continue. Because I mean, I just watching these games back. I mean, as much as I know people are really emotionally tied to Derek Carr, he really just has not played well, and we have to be
I would
we have to
add,
be real. Yeah.
you mentioned Caleb Williams. If the Raiders are in position to draft Caleb Williams next year, they'll have a new head coach too, because they would have to be
Exactly. That's
two or three wins.
that's the point. And that's the reason why I think exactly.
Josh McDaniels is not thinking about drafting Caleb Williams right
he's
now.
not because he won't be here for that.
He will not be here.
He will not be here for that. They're 2 wins, 3 wins. There's no way 13 is and USC is going to be a Raider.
I would add too, like, there were good times with Derek Carr. We're not here to bash Derek Carr and tell you how terrible he is. Like, we understand he had good moments. We understand what type of quarterback he is. But at the end of the day, it's been 9 years and the Raiders have decided to go in that direction.
What's your favorite Derek Carr moment?
I mean, I was at the game in 2016 when they beat the Chargers down in San Diego at the old Qualcomm to clinch the playoff berth for the first time and
Reggie
forever.
Nelson pick at the end, right?
Yeah, they won 16-13. I want to say Bruce Irvin had a late sack. Janikowski catch. My daughter and I went to that game. I'd say favorite moment. I still think that game against Kansas City. I think were they 0-10 at that point, and they came down at the end of the game. No time on the clock, where there was a couple penalties, and he throws the touchdown to Crabtree with 0 on the clock to win it. The overtime win on Christmas Eve against the Chargers, Charles Woodson's last game. I was in the Coliseum for that game. He didn't have a great game that day, but just, games I remember being there in person, big things that happened for the Raiders in the last 9 years. We'll remember those. We'll probably be talking 10 years from now doing this podcast like we did with Harvey Williams, and I'll remind Harvey Williams, hey, remember this game? You did this and you did that, and we'll talk to people that played on this team. But the organization's going in a different direction, and as Raider fans, we have to live with that, and whether we like it or not. And it happens for every sport team we've ever been fans of.
And for me, one of the biggest moments was, and it happened in the game that he ended up getting hurt in, but they were demolished. I thought for sure they could go to the Super Bowl in 2016 because that Colt game, they were destroying the Colts in that game. So that was a great moment. I was at the three Crabtree touchdown game against the Ravens, and they were all. I think if I do remember, they were all in my end zone. I was right near the end zone, and they were just so many Raven fans just chirping so hard. And then when I turned around to say anything to them, they were gone. so it was, and I think that was another Reggie Nelson pick to end the game or something like that, or break our PBU to break up the game. I thought the game, I think 2015 when he went toe to toe with Big Ben. That was a tremendous game by
They
Derek
beat
Carr.
Kansas City with Ruggs. That was a big game.
Oh
That scored
man,
40
yeah,
points.
he scored 40
The
points.
Jeff Heath interception game.
Yes, Jeff Heath. Yeah, Jeff Heath had points. I mean, there's been there's been some good moments, and like I said, it goes back and forth. It can be, some of it is Derek, some of it's the organization. But I think at the end of the day, you got to like kind of look at it and just be kind of real with it, and just kind of say to yourself, hey, like he had numerous opportunities to kind of uplift this team, and they couldn't do it. So, all right. All right, Nation. There's emergency podcast with myself and Ryan Holmes. Talking about the Raiders, and they're moving on from Derek Carr. So we'll meet up with you next time.
All right, take care.
Take care.